Hey guys, Alex with Rapid Fire Rundown. Today, we're going to be discussing the Colt Gold Cup National Match, Series 70 to be specific. The Colt Gold Cup National Match is a well-renowned handgun made by Colt. I'm not going to go too much into the history of it, but the Gold Cup National Match is what many consider to be some of the first semi-custom 1911s that were offered, right? Way back when you had to send your pistol out to gunsmiths like Clark, as an example, Colt actually created the Gold Cup National Match line, which was, at the time, one of the best 1911s you could really buy. And that's about as much as I'm going to get into the history. I'd recommend you read it on your own. Maybe I'll make a video at a later time. Anyway, I want to discuss, first of all, my opinions on this specific firearm, as well as just the 1911 in general. I do have a great overview video that talks about the 1911 and its impact, um, and why I'm so fond of it. However, this video is just going to be talking about this specific gun and how it compares to a lot of others. All right, so let's set that down. As you can see on the table, we have a 226 and a Glock 43X. We're going to be discussing the pros and cons between this platform and then these more modern platforms as the video goes on. Okay, so this Gold Cup national match. I'm going to get it out of the way. We're going to talk about reliability. If your firearm is not reliable, then, why are you carrying it? We need our firearms to be the utmost quality and the utmost reliability if we want to defend our life with them. This has been pretty great. Not flawless, but great nonetheless. This is a competition 1911 chambered in 45 ACP. The reason I mentioned that it's competition is just because you'll notice the sights are target sights. The trigger is much fatter and has the adjustable wall rather, and then it's not the A1 style with the enhanced beaver tail. This is more so a classic 1911, and all of that has to do with reliability. The reliability of the platform has been almost perfect. I'm going to put some videos on the screen now, but out of my give or take 400 or 500 rounds between various different magazines, I have only had a handful of malfunctions. Now, those malfunctions were likely induced by me beating these magazines, specifically these 10 rounders actually. In the videos, you'll see me dropping them into sand. And 1911 magazines, as well as specifically the 2011 platform, really, they really have been the Achilles heel of the 1911. So prior to dropping my magazines in the sand and gumming them up, I don't think I had a single malfunction, actually. Once I started, I think I had a 200 round burn down 20-minute period where I just kept dropping these magazines in the sand over and over and gunking them up. It started to induce malfunctions. In the videos on the screen, you'll see that. I had a couple failure to feeds. And then specifically when I distinctly remember grabbing the magazines and just them being coated on the outside. If you rattle them, you don't hear anything now, but you could definitely tell there was sand in there. And then when I came home and all the magazines were, the ammunition was expelled from the magazine, I couldn't even push down the feed lips, right? Or not the feed lips, the follower. So I do consider that to be a magazine malfunction, but we do kind of have to hold that against the 1911 because these are, generally speaking, the highest quality magazines you can buy. These are Wilson Combat mags, guys. These are Wilson Combat and Chip McCormick, and then the standard Colt 7-rounder. By the way, this gun is unloaded. There's no round in the chamber. There are rounds in the magazine just for demonstration purposes. But like I just mentioned, we do still kind of need to hold the 1911 accountable for that because these are the highest quality magazines you can possibly buy. Okay? Now, we're going to compare that to other guns. This 43X, is this a fair comparison? I don't care. It's a modern firearm. I want to compare it. 43X magazines, 43X magazines, if you drop these in the dirt, there are just really almost no places for dirt and sand to enter. And then furthermore, if you do need to get dirt and sand out, which I've never had to do with any of my Glock mags, base plate comes off very quickly, very easily, and Glocks just don't really care about sand and dirt being inside of them, right? They just run through anything. Now, P226 mags are a lot more similar to 1911 mags, right? If you upscaled a 1911 mag, I mean, look at them. There's a lot of similarity there. The 226 doesn't malfunction when sand gets in these, and I have been truly an asshole to this gun. I have done a mud test, water test, everything, um, and this just continues to run. So back to the 1911, I bring that up because these magazines, when they start to get gummed up, my Colt Gold Cup National Match, and I don't think it's just this firearm, but just most 1911s will really start to, they'll start to malfunction, guys. I think that's just a reality of the platform. So overall, the reliability has been great, but once again, you really do need to pay close attention to your mags. If you're running a 1911 as your main carry gun or your duty weapon, it's a good idea to every, I don't know, maybe couple hundred rounds, take apart this mag, clean it, lube it, make sure there's nothing obstructing the follower. Okay, so, and like I said, I'll be posting videos throughout this video of those malfunctions that were created. Now, let's talk about less important aspects of the firearm, because with reliability as pretty good, that's the most important thing. Now we're just going to be, talking about the fine details. So, first of all, why did I buy this firearm, right? I'm trying to get you guys a good angle. Do you see that sheen? Okay, so my first 1911 was a Dan Wesson Specialist, and I'm going to have a video on that, but it was awful. It was a 10mm black Specialist, looked cool, and I'll post a picture of it, but it would not run no matter what. I'm talking any ammo, I'm talking any ammo, any magazine, the gun would not get through an entire mag. When I reached out with Dan Wesson, they said that I needed to go through 500 rounds. I put like 1,000 rounds downrange with that gun, and it just still malfunctioned constantly, and they wouldn't do anything about it. So I'm extremely disappointed in them, and I do not recommend Dan Wesson in any capacity. But anyway, getting back to Colt. So Dan Wessons have a incredibly tight tolerance. Les Baer, as an example, Les Baer, they do something called kind of hard-fitting, oversized materials, where they will take a oversized slide and a oversized frame and then essentially file them down to mate with each other, and it will make the tightest weapon possible. Colt, this is a production gun. This is not a custom firearm with hard fitting. This is a slide and a frame that is built on a assembly line, I guess, by machines, right? It's not one gunsmith building the entire weapon. So this does have looser tolerances. Because of that, I like to imagine that because of those looser tolerances, the weapon has been significantly reliable. Now, let's talk about those tolerances for a minute. It's going to be very hard for you guys to hear this. You may not even hear it, but there's nothing. I can feel it in my hand that there is a tiny bit of play, but it's just so minimal that it is negligible. This is still a very tightly fitted weapon. Now, we try to move the slide up and down. Yep, we can't really do that. I mean, I'm right next to the mic, guys. Do you guys hear anything? No. The weapon is incredibly tightly fit. And then, bringing it back to Colt for a minute, I purchased this weapon because of the bluing. The bluing on the Colt Gold Cup National Match is absolutely beautiful. Way back when, Colt Gold Cups, they actually used a different charcoal bluing process, which was even more stunning, and I'll post a picture of that. I wish modern Colts had that bluing, but they've moved to this bluing on their Series 70 Colt Gold Cups, which is still miles ahead of many others, right? Looking at Springfield, looking at Dan Wesson, the Colt bluing is just special. I would argue it's some of the best bluing I've ever seen. I don't currently own an Alchemy custom weaponry or a less bear. These companies do bluing, but from what I've seen online, this is really probably my favorite bluing of the bunch. And that's what inspired me to purchase this firearm. All right, moving down to the grips. The grips I have stock on here. These are just the double diamond grips with the gold medallion. Incredibly classic, incredibly classy. Um, just harkens back to the original 1911, of course, with its Colt seal of approval. Very attractive grips. However, you can put whatever you want on there. Talking about the grips further, we have the grip screws. The grip screws and the bushings. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, underneath the grips, the 1911 has a bushing system that when you screw in, it's going to screw into that bushing, and if it is not Loctited, when you try to take the screws out, it will start to unravel that bushing. I have gone through, I think, like 4 bushings at this point, because the bushing system on the 1911 is the worst design possible. When I first took the grips off to put on some Wilson Combat grips, the top bushing, I think on this side, actually came out, and then trying to remove the screw from that bushing, completely stripped it, and some excellent gentleman on the 1911 forum, 1911 Addicts, I think, actually sent me a bushing when I inquired about it. Very nice dudes. 1911 people are just, we're all in this boat together, and everyone is just so nice. Anyway, I hate the bushing system. I can't fucking stand it. Specifically, I hate normal, like, Phillips screw grip screws, because first of all, when you're trying to unscrew them, it's very easy to kind of start ramming the outside of that and like deforming the wood, which is something I don't want to do. But also they just strip so easily, so I have hexes in here now, and many people will get mad at me for changing from straight screw slots because the screw slots are traditional, but I mean, guys, they're just so bad. The bushing system on the 1911 is just so bad. Yeah, that's all I have to say about the grips. Moving forward, let's just talk about the rest of the controls. The safety. The safety is decent. It's not great. When you first get it, you're actually going to notice that pushing down on the safety, putting it into fire, essentially, removing that safety, is incredibly difficult. Now, you'll also see that when I push it up, it's very positive. It's actually quite excellent. When I push it down, it can kind of over travel a little bit, and see if you can hear this. I don't know if you heard that, but you'll see that, come on camera, autofocus. You'll see that I can just go a little bit farther down and then it springs up. Is this the end of the world? No, but these kinds of issues are the quality assurance that more premium companies like, let's just say, Nighthawk, Les Bear, Ed Brown, right? These little things are things you're not going to see on more expensive 1911s. Now, once again, this 1911 is under $2,000, right? So, is it the end of the world? No, but it's just, it doesn't have quite the attention to detail as custom shop weapons would. The slide stop. The slide stop is great. It's also blued, which I appreciate. All the controls on this firearm are blued, which just makes for a incredibly sexy firearm. Slide stop works, though. I will say I have one very niche complaint, and that is the takedown on this firearm. When you, and I'm not going to show this because I don't think YouTube will allow it, but when you're putting the slide stop back in, this little detent that prevents that from happening is still super, super strong, so you actually need to get a tool to push that down so you can assemble your firearm. Is that an issue? No, of course not. I'd say many people would probably prefer that, but it's just kind of annoying when you're taking apart your 1911 and you need to have like a small pen or a small knife to get the slide back on it, right? Instead of just being able to kind of move past that detent, which I could do with a lot of other 1911s. The right side of the firearm is no different. The Gold Cup National Match logo looks absolutely stunning. And then the sights. The sights are adjustable target sights. You'll notice that mine, I actually have a little bit of green on the tip of it, just because I actually don't prefer blacked out rears and blacked out fronts. I'd much rather have like a high vis front, or honestly like double tritium or the 3 white dots setup. I think blacked out irons are stupid, but hey, it's all personal preference. Okay, so I've been avoiding it because it's arguably one of the best features of the weapon, and that's going to be the trigger. Let's make safe one more time. And this trigger is adjustable for over travel, but take a look at this trigger. I'm going to take up the slack. Just that tiny little input is the slack, and now I'm going to pull. Absolutely stunning. Let's try that again. Crazy nice. Out of my friend's TRP, out of my Dan Wesson Specialist that I had previously, this is the best trigger by far. The Colt Gold Cup National Match triggers are also incredibly wide, right? So instead of having a extremely thin trigger, like let's just say this Glock right here, that little fin right there that kind of takes up most of your finger real estate, I guess. It's an incredibly wide trigger, which allows you to apply the pressure across a wider trigger bow, which just makes a absolutely phenomenal trigger. And because of that, I'm able to be incredibly accurate with this firearm. Um, Believe it or not, and this is, I love the 43X, a 43X with a red dot, I am able to be as accurate with the 1911 as I can with a red dot firearm, which is absolutely ludicrous. And that's a testament to me, guys. With enough training, you'll be as accurate with this or this as you will with the 1911. But the 1911 trigger is so good that I'm able to actually be more accurate than a red dot optic. Kind of crazy. 1911 triggers are just well known for being the best in the industry, and there's a reason why we're also nostalgic about the platform, but also why we keep turning to them for competition. It's because of the triggers. Okay, so I want to talk about some detractors of this specific firearm, not just the 1911, we'll get into that, but this specific firearm. And there's only a few. First of all was this detent, and I'm not going to consider that too much of an issue, because like I mentioned, some people probably prefer that, and you don't want your slide stop falling out. Second of all, the sights. People love these sights, right? For whatever reason, people absolutely love these competition sights. I'm not a big fan. I'd much rather have I'll put my hand in front so you can see. I'd much rather have like a ledge, like this P226, so I could rack it off of like a belt as an example. Um, but they're still great. They're still incredibly accurate, and they are, of course, adjustable. Now, the last argument against this particular 1911, once again, not just 1911s, but this particular 1911 is rust. Okay, so earlier I told you guys that the reason I purchased this weapon was in large part that beautiful bluing. And I'm not really doing it justice. Like, I'll try to wipe this off. It is absolutely stunning. If you don't have a 1911 that's blued, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's the classic colorway of the 1911. It's the classic finishing of the 1911. And DLC coatings and hard chrome coatings and all these are really cool, but there's just something American about a finely blued 1911 made by Colt, of all things, right? Colt's the original manufacturer. But that comes with a problem. 1911s that are blued are incredibly susceptible to rust. The platform is just, or rather the coating is just not very wear resistant or really weather resistant. And like I said, I don't beat this gun. I beat this gun. I beat my Glock. I mean, just look at it. But I don't beat a finely tuned 1911, guys. I'm not that cruel. Um, and just from sitting in my little pistol rack in my room with an AC on 24/7, so it's nice and climate controlled, I've developed some rust on this firearm. Now, it is just surface rust that brushes away, but I'm going to show you where it was. So you can't see it because it doesn't exist right now, but I did have some orange right up here, a bunch of little specks that actually looked really significant. I put this gun down for about a week and didn't touch it, and I noticed that. Now, I also have, is it gone? I think it's gone. Well, I had, when I checked just a minute ago, I had a little bit of orange surface rust right here. Okay. Now, is that Colt's fault? No. It's because the weapon is blued. A DLC 1911, like my friend's TRP operator, is not going to have this issue. But because of that rusting issue, and you don't want your firearm to rust, guys, for obvious reasons, I can't recommend this gun in like a duty capacity, because what if you're out in a rainstorm for the night? You're going to come home and you miss a single droplet of water and you go to your firearm the next day and it's just covered in rust. No, that's crazy. And my weapon, like I said, it hasn't been beaten. It's been sitting on a rack and it's still developed these 2 rust points. So if you do purchase this Gold Cup National match, you really do need to be checking it probably every day or at least every week to make sure there's no rust developing on anywhere that there's bluing, or this side, which of course doesn't have the bluing. Because if you go on vacation for a month and leave your guns and they're not just covered in oil, you may come back to a completely orange gun. And once again, it's not Colt's fault, and I don't really even hold it against the gun because it's just the nature of the steel and the bluing. Okay? Um, the last thing I want to talk about is just magazines. Like I mentioned, the magazines have been pretty reliable, actually phenomenally reliable, up until I started beating the hell out of them and just, well, I wouldn't say beating them, but dropping them into sand, right? And sand is going to destroy a lot of magazines. Wilson Combat Mags, they're phenomenal. I recommend them. As long as you stay with like Chip McCormick or Colt Mags or Wilson Combat Mags, specifically Wilson Combat Mags, you really shouldn't anticipate magazine-related issues. We're kind of blessed that Wilson Combat makes such a phenomenal mag for still relatively cheap. I'm talking between like $20 and $50 depending on the mag. But these 10 rounders, first of all, they're an absolute vibe. Here, let me flip this around. They're an absolute vibe, but they work flawlessly. And moving down to 8 rounders, the 8 rounders with a little base pad work as well. All right. So the last topic of discussion I have for you all today is just going to be holsters and where I think the 1911 and this 1911 compares with others and, of course, modern firearms. Um, the 1911 for many people is just such a nostalgic firearm, right? We all love it and we all come back to it over and over again just for a pleasant shooting experience at the range, but some of us decide to carry it. If you do want to carry a Gold Cup national match or a TRP or a non-railed 1911, Tennecore. This Tennecore holster is pretty great. It is the Tennecore Velo 4, and it will actually fit 1911s and 2011s. 1911s, in case you don't know, actually conceal pretty well just because of how thin the platform is. And this is a pretty phenomenal holster. Furthermore, we have the T-Rex Arms Iron Side, I think is what it's called. This is a strong side carry holster. If you do roll like that, I don't carry strong side. Hello, can you please get in? Well, that needs to be adjusted. And I guess I'll make one last note as well. This Gold Cup National match is incredibly sharp. So with like Kydex holsters or specifically leather holsters, make sure that you're not marring the inside of your holster, as Colt does not give a shit about dehorning and just smoothing out the firearm. If you run your finger across that, you'll probably cut yourself. It's like a knife. And then my last topic of conversation is, like I said, just comparing it to other firearms. Take this review as a standalone review of the Colt Gold Cup National Match, which, by the way, gets my overall recommendation. But when we compare it to a P226, a P226 is a hammer-fired design that allows a light, has slides for a red dot cut, which I guess you could say the 1911 technically does, but the P226 is offering more than double the capacity. 1911's standard mags are between 7 and 8 rounds. A P226 is going to offer 15 rounds of 9mm, which can be arguably as strong as a lot of older 45 ACP loads. 9mm is more than enough for self-defense, and I consider this to be a much better self-defense firearm than a 1911. That's not saying you shouldn't carry a 1911. If you enjoy it, you should. Just understand there are other potentially better options out there. Compared to something like a USP-45 Tactical, the USP-45 Tactical magazine is holding 12+1. That's 50% more ammunition. And while the USP is definitely bigger, absolutely bigger, and I would say shoots worse than the 1911, once again, 50% extra ammo is, it can make or break a platform, right? The 1911's biggest crux 100% is its low magazine capacity. And that's why the 2011 exists. And then lastly, we're just going to show off the Glock for the 15th time on the channel. The 43X can hold between 10 and 15 rounds if you're using shield mags or PSA mags, which I don't technically recommend, but still 10 rounds in a firearm this small that is also compensated and has a more than sufficient light and has a RMRCC on there. This is a better firing weapon, a more concealable firing weapon, and a lighter weapon. So once again, I'm not telling you guys to not carry a 1911, right? If you want to, if you're going to a nice barbecue, or if you just want to carry something that your grandfather carried in World War II, right? Or if you're in the military and you're using the Colt M45A1, if you just want to carry a 1911 because it's an American icon and it feels like home, please, I implore you to. It is a phenomenal shooter. I'm phenomenally accurate with it. Just understand that it has limited magazine capacity. It is a extremely heavy firearm, right? Things made out of steel, guys. Steel and wood. And also 45 ACP recoil is just significantly more than 9mm, especially 9mm comped, which, by the way, if you've never shot 9mm comped, go do that sometime and you'll never turn back. It's just such a pleasant experience. All right, well, those are my thoughts on the Gold Cup National Match. Like I said, I highly recommend it. Just be careful of rusting. Please feel free to chime off in the comments below if you have other recommendations or other blued issues like mine. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more similar content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Recording?
Yep.
I'm out of ammo completely. All right, you can stop.
You're good.
Oh, I got hit by that one.
Quick burn down of the 1911. We got 60 rounds to go through in 2 minutes. Let's go. Holy fuck, I didn't even chamber it. sluggish. I think she needs to be cleaned.